Up to this point, we have been using the bash shell on the command line. However, there are quite a few different command line shells available in Linux. They accomplish the same things, but there are slight differences. Note that not all of these shells are installed by default on Linux distributions. If you want to try one out, you may have to install it. In fact, I had to install all of the shells other than bash on Linux Mint. While discussing the full details of each individual shell is beyond the scope of this course, I do want to mention a few of the more popular ones. Bash is the default on most systems and is usually the shell used for scripting, so you should definitely be comfortable using it. When you remotely log into a Linux server, you may not be able to install another shell, but bash should always be available. The Korn shell KSH is another popular shell. Note that the prompt changed, but that is just because I haven't configured it on this machine. Other than the prompt, it acts like bash. The C shell CSH and the upgraded version TCSH are popular shells with programmers. Lastly, the Z shell ZSH is a more modern shell. It is the default shell in Kali Linux. For most of the functionality we have encountered so far, you won't see many differences between any of these shells. However, once you start using more advanced techniques, the differences become apparent. One of the big differences between shells are the built-in commands. Some of the commands you use on the command line aren't executable files on the file system. Rather, they are built into the shell itself. For example, we have been using cd to change directories. Let's see if it's an executable file and if we can find it. We weren't able to find the cd command on the file system or a man page associated with it, but it is still a command we can execute. This is because the shell interprets it before it ever tries to find an executable on the file system. We saw the same thing with file and path expansion. The ls command doesn't see the asterisk. The shell interprets the asterisk, replaces the file pattern with all the files that match that pattern, and then sends the arguments to the ls command. Most of the topics we will cover in this section use functionality built into the shell. We will be using the bash shell. If you prefer a different shell, you should be able to accomplish the same thing, but the syntax will probably be a bit different.